before most people could realize the extent of what was happening, China became a world leader in making and buying EVs. And the momentum hasn't slowed. In just the past 2 years, the number of EVs sold annually in the country grew from 1.3 million to a whopping 6.8 million, making 2022 the 8th consecutive year in which China was the world's largest market for EVs. Besides, 1 in 4 cars sold in China in 2022 was an EV. China accounted for nearly 59% of the global EV sales volume. The industry is growing at a speed that has surprised even the most experienced observers. The forecasts are always too low. This dominance in the EV sector has not only given China's auto industry sustained growth during the pandemic but boosted China in its quest to become one of the world's leaders in climate policy. How exactly did China manage to pull this off? Well, from generous government subsidies to support for lithium batteries, here are the keys to understanding how China managed to build a world-leading industry in electric vehicles. 1. When did China start investing in EVs and why? In the early 2000s, before it fully ventured into the field of EVs, China's car industry was in an awkward position. It was a powerhouse in manufacturing traditional internal combustion cars, but there were no domestic brands that could one day rival the foreign makers dominating this market. They realized that they would never overtake the US, German, and Japanese legacy automakers on internal combustion engine innovation. And research on hybrid vehicles, whose batteries in the early years served a secondary role relative to the gas engine, was already being led by countries like Japan, meaning China also couldn't really compete there either. This pushed the Chinese government to break away from the established technology and invest in completely new territory, cars powered entirely by batteries. The risks were extremely high. At this point, EVs were only niche experiments made by brands like General Motors or Toyota, which usually discontinued them after just a few years. But the potential reward was a big one, an edge for China in what could be a significant slice of the auto industry. Plus, for China, EVs also had the potential to solve several other major problems, like curbing its severe air pollution, reducing its reliance on imported oil, and helping to rebuild the economy after the 2008 financial crisis. It seemed like a win-win for Beijing. China already had some structural advantages in place. While EV manufacturing involves a different technology, it still requires the cooperation of the existing auto supply chain, and China had a relatively good one. The manufacturing capabilities and cheap commodities that sustained its gas car factories could also be shifted to support a nascent EV industry. So the Chinese government took steps to invest in related technologies as early as 2001. That year, EV technology was introduced as a priority science research project in China's 5-year plan, the country's highest-level economic blueprint. Then, in 2007, the industry got a significant boost when Wan Gong, an auto engineer who had worked for Audi in Germany for a decade, became China's Minister of Science and Technology. Wan had been a big fan of EVs and tested Tesla's first EV model, the Roadster, in 2008, the year it was released. People now credit Wan with making the national decision to go all in on electric vehicles. Since then, EV development has been consistently prioritized in China's national economic planning. So what exactly did the government do? It's ingrained in the nature of the country's economic system. The Chinese government is very good at focusing resources on the industries it wants to grow. It has been doing the same for semiconductors recently. Starting in 2009, the country began handing out financial subsidies to EV companies for producing buses, taxis, or cars for individual consumers. That year, fewer than 500 EVs were sold in China. But more money meant companies could keep spending to improve their models. It also meant consumers could spend less to get an EV of their own. From 2009 to 2022, the government poured over 200 billion renminbi, $29 billion, into relevant subsidies and tax breaks. While the subsidy policy officially ended at the end of last year and was replaced by a more market-oriented system called dual credits, it had already had its intended effect. The more than 6 million EVs sold in China in 2022 accounted for over half of global EV sales. The government also helped domestic EV companies stay afloat in their early years by handing out procurement contracts. Around 2010, before the consumer market accepted EVs, the first ones in China were part of its vast public transportation system. But subsidies and tax breaks are still not the whole picture. There were yet other state policies that encouraged individuals to purchase EVs. In populous cities like Beijing, car license plates have been rationed for more than a decade, and it can still take years or thousands of dollars to get one for a gas car. But the process was basically waived for people who decided to purchase an EV. Finally, local governments have also sometimes worked closely with EV companies to customize policies that can help the latter grow. For example, BYD, the Chinese company currently challenging Tesla's dominance in EVs, rose up by keeping a close relationship with the southern city of Shenzhen and making it the first city in the world to completely electrify its public bus fleet. Okay, so China is the global EV leader. But how does Tesla, the most popular individual producer of EVs, fit in? The development of China's EV industry has actually been deeply intertwined with Tesla's rise as the biggest EV company. Beyond financial incentives, local Chinese governments have been actively courting Tesla to build production facilities in the country. Its gigafactory in Shanghai was built extremely quickly in 2019 thanks to the favorable local policies. Today, China is an indispensable part of Tesla's supply chain. The Shanghai Gigafactory is currently Tesla's most productive manufacturing hub and accounts for over half of Tesla cars delivered in 2022. But the benefits have been mutual. China has gained a lot from Tesla as well. The company has been responsible for imposing the catfish effect on the Chinese EV industry, meaning it's forced Chinese brands to innovate and try to catch up with Tesla in everything from technology advancement to affordability. And now, even Tesla needs to figure out how to continue being competitive in China because domestic brands are coming at it hard. Can other countries replicate China's success? Many countries are almost certainly now looking at China's EV experience and feeling jealous. But it may not be that easy for them to achieve the same success, even if they copy China's playbook. While the US and some countries in Europe meet the objective requirements to supercharge their own EV industries, like technological capability and established supply chains, but they also have different political systems. Is this country willing to invest in this sector? Is it willing to give special protection to this industry and let it enjoy an extremely high level of policy priority for a long time? That's hard to say. What does China's EV market look like now? As a result of all this, China now has an outsized domestic demand for EVs. According to a survey from the US consulting company AlixPartners, over 50% of Chinese respondents were considering battery electric vehicles as their next car in 2021, the highest proportion in the world and 2 times the global average. There are a slew of Chinese-built options for these customers, including BYD, SAIC GM Wuling, Geely, NIO, Speng, and Li Auto. While the first 3 are examples of gas car companies that successfully made the switch to EVs early on, the last 3 are pure EV startups that grew from nothing to household names in less than a decade. And the rise of these companies, and other Chinese tech behemoths, coincided with the rise of a new generation of car buyers who don't see Chinese brands as less prestigious or worse in quality than foreign brands. Because they've grown up with Alibaba, because they've grown up with Tencent, they effectively were born into a digital environment, and they are much more comfortable with Chinese brands versus their parents, who would still rather likely buy a German brand or a Japanese brand. The fact that these Chinese brands have sprinkled a little bit of nationalism into their marketing strategy also helps. Okay, that's all for today. Please put your comments below, and share your insightful ideas with other people. Do you want to learn about more auto stories? Please keep following our channel and like our videos. See you.